Hello, BookTube. I thought I'd start making videos again, and since I don't really remember what I'm doing, I thought I would go for the basics. A mail haul. Now I want to do a tag for you to start off the year. My first tag of the year is the Great Hitchcock Book Tag, which was created by Bart Gilbertson, and he also tagged me. And a little bit after that, I was tagged by Michael K Vaughan, and both of them did fantastic versions of this tag. I'll leave links to both of them down below. As you can tell from the title, it's all about Alfred Hitchcock. It's all about prompts drawn from his movies. So I'm going to just go through these prompts and see if I still have the knack for tags. And I have cover images ready so that you're not just staring at me and Lord Ganesha the whole time. So prompt number 1 is Spellbound. Name a book that had you so completely enthralled that you couldn't put it down. For me, this is not out in America yet, but I loved it, absolutely loved it. You would never guess from this book, I don't think, how old its author is. As simple as that. This is by Antonia Fraser, and this is her new book, a biography of Lady Caroline Lamb. How are we doing it for light? Is it just going to behave itself? Well, that's close enough, right? You can tell what that cover is. I don't know when this comes out in this country, but I gobbled it up. Just loved it. I've loved this author's biographies for 40 years, longer than that. I fell in love with her way of bringing characters to life with Mary Queen of Scots, and then went backwards and forwards and read everything. And there have been some books that didn't work as well with me as others, but this one I thought was perfect. just wonderful, absolutely wonderful. So that's prompt number 1. And then prompt number 2 is Rope. Name a book where the murder weapon is anything other than a gun or a knife. This is something that I have been rereading. I reread it all the time. It's one of my favorite books, and I couldn't help but realize that it's not a murder mystery, but you know that it's going to end in a death, and you know how that death is going to happen, and that it is God Emperor of Dune by Frank Herbert, in which one of the characters from the previous book in the series is mutating into a different life form and is thousands of years old. And at the state of his mutation when this book opens, thousands of years after the events of Children of Dune, the book before this, the state of his mutation is such that he is extremely tough physically, because he's transforming into a sandworm. He's transforming into the giant indigenous life forms of the deserts of the planet Arrakis. And when you're reading this book, when I was reading this book when it first came out, and then ever since, this is my favorite of the Dune books. And when you're reading it, you know that Duke Leto is not, the God Emperor of Dune is not going to survive the book. You know that. If not, what would be the point of writing it? If you could plop down the action at any point in his thousands of years of reigning, and then pick up the action again with him still in charge, then there's no dramatic arc. And Frank Herbert wasn't he wasn't intimately faithful to dramatic arcs, but he knew better than to write a book like this without it. So when you start the book, you know that the God Emperor of Dune is not going to survive. And because he's mutating into a giant sandworm, it's not hard to guess how he's going to die. I won't spoil it for you, but the method by which he dies is not a gun or a knife. Let's just put it that way. So the next prompt is Vertigo. Name a book with a notable scene from a dizzying height. That is a new release by Michael Wetcher. This is a book called Hidden Mountains, Survival and Reckoning After a Climb Gone Wrong. A nonfiction work about two couples that go mountaineering in Alaska's Hidden Mountains. The book, the narrator, the writer goes on and on about how seldom the recesses of these mountains are visited by humans. It goes on and on, hinting that a lot of the places where they went, where they hiked, no one had ever been before. I know for a fact, firsthand, that isn't true. But this group encountered one of the random events that can happen whenever you are far, far from civilization. The ones who come out of that, who walk all the way out of adventures like this, hale and hearty, are lucky. And they ought to know it. They ought to say so. I'm the first to say it about my own adventures in the Hidden Mountains and anywhere else, is that you're partly lucky. your left turn instead of a right turn led you right where you wanted to be instead of leading you to a disaster over which you had no control. The hiking party here encounters a rockfall, which can be really dangerous. That can completely change everything, and it does for them. And the author does a really good job. This is a sort of a thriving subgenre, all the more popular as the wilderness areas of the world dwindle and vanish and become fodder for drone footage. There are more and more of these kinds of books. This is very effectively done. So I really enjoyed it, in addition to fitting the prompt. Then we have, next prompt is inevitable when you're dealing with Alfred Hitchcock, and that is Psycho. Name a book with a notable scene, or no, name a book where the main character is a psychopath. I don't mean to start the year off on a bad foot, but I'm going to choose the New Yorker's edition of the January 6th report with an introduction by David Remnick. This isn't meant as a dramatic account, and this is the guts and all. This is everything to do. There are a couple of publishers who are coming out with executive reports, executive versions of this, so that you don't have to slog through the whole thing like some of us did with the Mueller report. The difference here, one of the many differences here, is that the Mueller report had the most powerful law enforcement officer in the country lying about it before it was released, knowing that if you get out ahead of a story and lie about it, that lie will stick. Its roots will go down deep. It was to the incredible benefit of then President Donald Trump that he had an attorney general who was lickspittle enough, spineless enough, and morality-free enough to do that. Bill Barr went and did that. He was willing to do that. He was willing to go out and lie about the Mueller report, which contains, if you read it, instead of just listening to his 6-minute press release, if you read the Mueller report, you encounter 7, 8, 9 felony offenses that the President of the United States committed and that were his idea. He wasn't led like an innocent little lamb into them. They were his idea from start to finish. This report isn't going to have that. All this is going to have is screaming fake tweets from a beachside resort in Florida, from an old man in a beachside resort in Florida saying that all of it is a lie, that David Remnick is fake, that he doesn't even exist. Prove it. Show me your long-form birth certificate. That's not going to have the weight of the Attorney General of the United States of America getting in front of a packed press room and lying. And, of course, the wrongs in this book are 10 times worse than the ones in the Mueller report. And at the heart of the story is a raging psychopath, the then president of the United States. All of this happens, everything that's in this book happens because of him. All the stonewalling, all the violence, all the lying afterwards, and the pathology that has firmly taken hold of one of the two major political parties in my country. All of it springs from the psychopathy of one individual, one person. And if you don't believe me, I would say wait until that person dies, but that's in the late 2040s, by which point the psychopathy will live on its own. It won't need its prime vector. But I am still digesting this. It is utterly surreal. I'm sure that I'll be talking about it on Cedarburg Public Library Radio, but it is utterly surreal. It is the most surreal document in American history. And it fits the prompt, provocative though that may be for me to say. Then prompt number 5 is Frenzy. Name a book with a society or community in complete chaos. Now, I could mention the January 6th report, because if it isn't a sign of our society in complete chaos, I don't know what is. If you read it distanced from it, if you read it just as a historical document about American history, your natural assumption when you get to the last page is that most of the major players involved, but certainly the main psychopath involved, is at the very least in prison for life. No trial, no charges, where you will live until 2047 happy that you were not hanged in front of television cameras. And that isn't true. When you finish the report, you look up in a world where that person is running for president of the country he tried to overthrow. But I'm not going to harp on it again. For number 5, I'm going to mention this book, it's also a new release. I don't think it's out yet, but it's amazing. Depressing. Know that ahead of time before you take it on. It's by Jeff Charlotte, and it's called The Undertow: Scenes from a Slow Civil War, in which he goes to the very bottom of the basket of deplorables. He goes to the worst of the worst of the religion of Trumpism, that sees him as a messiah, that sees the woman who broke through the cordon at the Capitol and was shot dead as a saint, as someone who's been elevated to the sainthood. There are shrines to her. I'm not going to say her name. She doesn't deserve her name. And she didn't deserve to be shot and killed by Capitol Police. She deserved to be shot and killed by Capitol Police and then have them form a semi-cordon around her and keep pumping rounds into her dead body. I'm not going to indulge in any kind of the stuff that's in this book is incredibly disturbing. And the thing that you have to remind yourself of while you're reading, if you decide to take this on, Jeff Charlotte is a very good writer. So there are narrative benefits that you will get from reading this book. The thing you have to remember is that he is going to the furthest extremes of Trumpism, of the Trump cult. And maybe when he was doing a lot of this research, in fact, certainly when he was doing a lot of this researching and even pitching and then working this book through drafts, things looked a little worse than they do now. Much to my surprise, the American electorate rejected large chunks of Trumpism and has taken to laughing to mocking diehard Trumpists who are naked authoritarians who don't believe in elections and want to shoot and kill their political opponents. It seems like the American public is not ready for that. They don't like the taste of that, and they don't want it. And a large number of people of the type that Charlotte talks to and infiltrates himself in, this had to have been a dangerous book to do on-the-ground research for. These people want their opponents physically dead. A large number of the people, the kind of people that he talks to in this book, are now going to prison or are in prison. Or if they're not in prison, they have discovered that they are unemployable, that they are social pariahs. They have, some of them, the nerve to complain about it, but nevertheless, that's one positive little glimmer in this book when you're reading it, is that maybe things aren't as bad as they looked when Charlotte was writing this book. Anyway, let's move on to the next prompt here. The next prompt is Topaz. Name a book where gems or jewels are an essential part of the plot. And here it's a book that's on my mind because someone was very, very nice to me. Someone was very, very nice to me. Some of you may remember that I got in the mail the new deluxe edition of J.R.R. Tolkien's Silmarillion. I got it from the publisher with Tolkien's own artwork. A very nice edition. Too nice for the likes of me. I freely admit that. And in addition to getting that from the publisher, I also got another edition of the Silmarillion from a friend who knew and said in their card that this might help with my lingering rage and disappointment over Amazon's The Rings of Power. It didn't. I still think regularly about Amazon's The Rings of Power. But this is at least tougher than the version that I got. This is the same thing. It's the same deluxe edition of the Silmarillion with illustrations, only this will live a lot easier on my shelves without being destroyed. I'd rather than have any books here on the stool, I got a picture of it for you. This is a slipcase with the author's illustrations, but instead of a flimsy dust jacket, this has a die-cut box that you can slip it in and out of. Now, I'm pretty rough on slipcases too, but I should be able to manage this a little bit better. And of course, the center item in the Silmarillion are 3 gems, the Silmarils. So I naturally thought of this for this prompt. Then the next one is the birds. Name a book where a bird or birds play an important part in the book. And for this is another new release. This is by Susan Ogilvy, and this is Nests. Very bright cover, so it might wash out completely here. But this is a lovely thing that is a collection of the author's illustrations of various birds' nests with the natural history that goes along with them. Do we have any way of showing you this? No, it's pretty much a white cover. So we're dealing with, but you can look it up, right, and find it on Amazon. It's just called Ness by Susan Ogilvie. So you can kind of, sort of see it there. It's got one of her illustrations on the cover. And it's wonderful. It's wonderful. It's 2024, like any year, we'll have a small handful of must-have bird books. And this is one of them. Pretty easy to predict that this will be one of them. Then we have the final question, which is Marnie. Name a book with a troubled or shady female character. And here I want to nominate Andrew Main's latest book about undersea investigations, Sea Castle. Only not for our main heroine, Sloane, who is, in this book, this is a bit of an odd duck in the series so far. There's precious little in the way of underwater investigation in this book. That unit has been temporarily disbanded and buried in bureaucracy, and Sloane has been loaned out to another police force, a decidedly land-based police force. And she's really good. Sloane is really good. One of the endearing things about this book, much like in the TV show Criminal Minds, is that Sloane is unrealistically really good. She's brilliant. Too brilliant. But it's so endearingly done that you don't mind. And her brilliance is seen as showing off by her new superiors, and they put her in the basement. they relegate her to the basement, which is occupied by a character named Gwen Wilder, who is the star of this book, really. I don't think that was Andrew Main's intention. But she also has been relegated to the basement to work on old cold cases because she's obsessive and unconventional and also brilliant. And it's fascinating. I don't often see it happen that a side character will so completely supplant the charismatic main character of a series, but it happened here. It happened in this book. So it was Gwen that I was thinking of for this prompt, not Sloane. And that is it. Those are the prompts for my first tag of the year, the Alfred Hitchcock tag. And for all that's left to do is to tag people. I have a list of people I want to tag here. I'll tag the Book Schnitter. I'll tag Micah Cummins, of course. Maybe it'll be his first tag of the year. I'll tag Revenant Reads and Gina Stanier. I would like to tag Ann Novella. I would also like to tag a BookTube newbie, Troy Tradup. The author, Troy Tradup, is a BookTube newbie. He has decided to at least try to make a BookTube channel of his own. And I'll leave a link to his channel. He is the author of this, The Forsaken Boy, which is one of the best werewolf novels I've ever read, and I've read them all. This is an absolutely unconventional and fantastic werewolf novel. And I will leave a link to the Amazon link for The Forsaken Boy, in case you feel like buying a copy. My recommendation will not lead you astray. You will be happy if you're a fan at all of werewolf novels, although in this case I would argue you don't need to be. But if you are a fan at all of werewolf novels, you can take my recommendation to the bank. You'll be happy that you did. And as you will see from the link to Troy's BookTube newbie tag, he did not leave a link to his book. I don't know how these authors make a living, but I'll gladly do it. So we have an author in our midst. You would think that would make him enemy number one. For me, authors tend to be enemy number one for critics, but in this case, as I have put it on this channel many, many times before, his credit in the bank of Steve is incredibly high. He wrote a werewolf novel, which is a favorite of mine anyway, and he wrote a great one. So I recommend his channel. Go and see if you like it. But anyway, that is the great Hitchcock book tag. So thank you very much to Bart Gilbertson and to Michael K Vaughan for tagging me and pulling me back into the BookTube ecosystem. We'll see if it sticks. Anyway, I'll wrap this up for now. I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.